the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
It's a glorious morning on High Ash Farm. Blue skies, cotton wool clouds, fresher than of late as well. The oppressive heat has gone, and we've been watching swallows low over this field of purple flowers, and there's a kestrel circling around as well. It's good to be alive, isn't it, Chris?
Matthew, what a glorious midsummer morning, and you're really spoilt. We've come to one of the high spots on High Ash Farm. We've been here before a few times. It's a massive area of wildflowers, and as the season progresses, it's changed colour. Nothing to do with you, but it's bright purple this morning. It's knapweed in full flower, and it's also got another name. It's called hardheads. And it's really an unusual flower and wild plant, and it's a little bit of a nuisance in hayfields because it's very wiry. It's a thistle-like plant, and you can see the heads of the plant just here, and they are rock hard, hence hard heads. Lots of little bracts, you can squeeze them, and it's almost like a bullet. And it's become quite common here at the farm, and I do encourage it if I can, because it's a real favourite for lots of bees, butterflies and moths as well. And there's a day-flying moth here. You wouldn't think in broad daylight we'd be looking for moths, but I don't know quite where it's disappeared.
There we are.
There we are. There's one. Look at that. It's stunningly beautiful.
Just to say, we're putting up with a lot of noise from the Air Force today as well.
It's going to land again, and it's all. Oh, there's two. Perfect. Three. No, that's a bumblebee. I get too excited. Oh dear. Anyway, those Burnet moths, and they're day-flying moths, colonial as well, so they like living in particular areas. So if you came to this field last year, in this particular spot, you would see these species of moths here, and they're really unusual. I can see one edgeways on just in front of us. We look like a couple of Victorian butterfly collectors just here in front of us. Stunningly beautiful.
I can see one displaying over here, Chris, just behind you. The wings are out.
Oh, Matthew, you're well spotted. I think you'll be able to take this spot over before long. It's a 6-spot Burnet moth, not displaying, but actually mating.
Oh, there's two of them.
Yes, there are two of them joined back to back. Stunning, well spotted. Now, they are joined back to back, and what's happened is one of the females has just emerged from her cocoon, and where she spent about 10 days inside this paper-like structure, and we'll see if we can find some of those in a minute or two. And as soon as she's out of the cocoon, the males, which were flying around, which is what we've just seen, another one over there, and it looks like it's changed colour because it's bright green now, and it depends how the sun hits the wing cases. That's the colour you actually see. The wings are very reflective. So we've got two species of Burnet moths here, and in this country there's 7 species in total. Some of them are quite rare, quite scarce, and why it's good for us, it's daylight, they're moths, and it confused the early entomologists hugely because these moths behave like butterflies. So they did wonder whether they are a halfway stage between a moth, which when it's at rest perches up with its wings flat out, the butterflies, and with moths they usually perch up with their wings up, and these are sort of halfway. They're little pent-shaped wings, and we're looking at them with the sun behind us at the moment. They're sort of jet black from this angle, but there's 6 spots on them.
Bright red.
2, 2 and 2, so that's why they're called 6-spot burnets, and the other species on the other side of the field is a 5-spot burnet moth. Looks almost identical.
It's like a game of dice, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, yeah, they're so bright and rather wonderful. And again, the early entomologists were confused by them because they started collecting them and putting them in their sort of preservation jars, which had sodium cyanide in there. And normally when you put a butterfly in, your specimens that you collected, they'd be dead in sort of 30 seconds because there's cyanide gas in there. And the Burnet moths, when you put them in, they'd still be alive an hour later, and they could not understand it. But then it was discovered that the food plant of these moths, which we're looking at in this rather intimate pose that they're having, feed on birdsfoot trefoil. And birdsfoot trefoil has cyanide within the sap, and both the eggs that when they're laid on and the caterpillars when they hatch out start to imbibe the cyanide, so they're kind of used to it. It's in their bloodstreams, if you like. And the other thing that then happens is that birds learn these bright colours to be avoided because they're extremely bitter if you tasted them, and the birds certainly wouldn't come back for a second helping. So that's why they're flying around here, all around us, just sort of in abandonment. Once we had to walk in to see one. There's 1, 2, 3, and this pair mating right in front of us. And if we walked perhaps 50 yards, although the habitat's exactly the same, these moths wouldn't be here because they're strictly colonial like this.
So this is their patch.
Exactly so. So really beautiful creatures to have on the farm. And I suppose when we've been here before, we've had skylarks singing, but to have Burnet moths in your habitat is also a kind of sign that things are doing really well conservation-wise.
So they're like a barometer of how good the ecology is.
Absolutely right and perfect. Not only that, we've got the flowers, and this will be one of the last flower displays in the wildflower fields, but then we move to the other side of the farm. That's where it's just starting to flower. That will be the mustard and the fodder radish, the linseed, the sunflowers, and all coming out. So we have this succession which starts in almost at the end of February when you have the first dandelions out. People think that's weeds, but it's really the first pollen and nectar flow of the season. That then carries on, but dandelions also produce the first seeds out in the countryside. So when you hear conservationists talking about that hungry gap where there's a shortage of seeds at the end of winter, dandelions help to fill that gap early on in the season. So right beside you is the food plant, birdsfoot trefoil, and you can see just through there the little seed heads.
Yes,
just look exactly like a bird's foot, complete with the claws on them, look. And they're little pods ready to drop their seed on the ground. It's a legume, and it usually has 3 leaves, so it's a member of that particular family, legumes, trifoliates. But there are another couple of leaves a little bit further down, so it looks as though almost it has 5 leaves, but in fact it has 3. And that's one of those marvellous plants that fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere, one of the many members of the legume family, and that's extraordinary. But well done, you've got sort of masses of brownie points for finding us a pair of 6-spot burnets.
Still in Congress.
Look at that.
On that flower head.
Now you can see it's changed colour from black. I'm just holding it against the sun, and it's gone bright sort of dark green, and they're really sort of mating away. She, the female, is probably just out of her cocoon. So that's our next job, is to walk round. Particularly if you've got the sun behind us, you have to look for something kind of white. Generally, the caterpillars, when they're ready to pupate, do something absolutely amazing. They will climb up a grass stem, not on their food plant usually. That's very unusual to find the cocoons on the birdsfoot trefoil there, but we'll need to just turn round. Oh, another Burnet moth there, look. See, you can see we're kind of surrounded by them. A beautiful sort of bottle green one over there, still with the wing spots showing, but as I said, it just depends which way the light's reflecting off them.
In flight, the wings are going very fast.
Yes, they're quite yeah, they can fly quite quickly. You'll see them, the males. So what they're doing, although they're landing on the knapweed, the hard heads, flower heads, they're actually using their antennae to pick up the pheromones, which is released by the freshly emerged females. Literally, before they're even out of their egg case, they're being mated by a male. So the male's gone up just over there, and it's now going to come back down, and it's just sensing all around the flowers just to try and find one of those perfectly fresh, virgin females.
Not many cocoons to see.
Yes, right. No,
Well, you think there might be?
Yeah, we need to just turn round and look into the sun, and because I'm very fortunate, I don't use computers, and I can. We might need to walk through this taller grass and look backwards, which is an extraordinary thing to do, and then you see the reflective cocoons, which are high up on the grass stems. I'm just looking. There's a little bit of wind overnight, which might have dislodged some of them.
Lots of other insect life as well, I'm pleased to say. The odd bee and butterfly.
Yes, bees and butterflies. Right, we're nearly through the tall grass, so at this point we have to hopefully, fingers crossed, although I haven't seen any, to turn round and then just look through the grass at anything over there. That white spot, and another one over there. We've got to walk back.
Oh, yes.
You got them?
Yes, and just in front of us here.
Yeah, oh, there's one here.
Oh, that's a great technique, isn't it? Never saw them coming out of the sun, but going into it.
Yes, going into it. Look at this.
There we are, top of one of the hardheads.
And she's almost ready to come out. So the caterpillar migrates up any tall plant, and you can see there's some tall grasses. Look, 1, 2, 3, one down there, 4, right next to us.
And these are all burnets.
These are Burnet moth cases, the sort of case encasing the caterpillar. So, like butterflies and most species of moth, 4 stages. The first one, obviously, the egg. They hatch those. The female lays those on the birdsfoot trefoil. That's the food plant for the caterpillar. Those then hatch out, and you have this glorious little stubby black and green caterpillar. It's about a slightly small cigarette butt size, brightly coloured. Birds won't eat it again because of the bright colours and the bitter taste. They then spend 8 to 10 days feeding on the birdsfoot trefoil, and when they're ready, they climb tall grass stalks like the ones over there in front of us. And I did wonder whether we'd be lucky enough to see one emerging and then a male arrive instantly, and that hasn't happened, but we've got one here almost ready to emerge. Caterpillar hoiks up to the top of a stem and then cements itself to the top of the stem. Then, almost by magic, it spins a cocoon, which is almost made up of little threads. You can just see, if I turn it round, you can see the little stripes. It's almost reflective, and the caterpillar is inside there, but it doesn't come out as a caterpillar. It comes out as a 6-spot burnet, and that's the next stage, the metamorphosis from the caterpillar to the adult moth. The moths only live a few days, stay in this particular area, lay their eggs, and there's an adult just searching round because of these tall grasses. It's actually looking for female, and once got my eye in here now, I can see another larval case down a bit lower down, about halfway up the grass stalk, about 10 inches. This one's a good 18 inches off the ground, almost ready. And if we walk back now, using the sun behind us, they're almost reflective. So you've got one right at the top of that grass stem. We'll just walk and see if we can, I mean, it's only a tiny chance we actually get one hatching. You have to wait here a total of 10 days for that to happen once the cocoon has been spun. Oh, crumbs!
oh, there's something emerging.
Yes, there is. It's just left. That's the larval case. That's all that remains of the caterpillar. Rat's been chewing grass, and our terrier has accompanied us into the middle of the field. Look at this. I think we're just minutes late. There's the empty cocoon case and the case. All that remains of that black and green caterpillar is just hanging out of the top of the larval case, and you can see it's almost a paper-like structure. It's really, really beautiful. Just cemented really carefully. Despite having over an inch of rain in the storm yesterday, it stayed on. It hasn't been washed down onto the ground. Just one of the miracles of nature right in front of us. Look.
It's quite extraordinary, because that rain was really torrential yesterday,
Yes.
and yet nature bounces back.
Yes, it has. And now we're looking at, I can see another one through there and two over there, and yet we walked through this very spot and couldn't see one. So there you are, one of the tricks of finding out what's on your own farm. You can it's kind of divination, isn't it? Sort of what I used to use to find water under the ground years ago.
Chris is so happy about his 6-spot burnets that he's had photographs commissioned.
Yes.
And you can go now and have a look on the Facebook site for High Ash Farm, and you'll see some terrific close-up shots.
Yes, I know, just amazing. I haven't got all the gear to do that, but Laura scratches her head sometimes, but when she will come and look at these, I'm guarantee there'll be a huge smile on her face, and the camera will be clicking away, and we'll see if we can catch that intimate moment that we saw when we entered this field. But I've got my eye in now, and I can see them here, there and everywhere. How we walked through there without seeing them. On our way back, we may be lucky.
We're about to be buzzed by Chris's private helicopter.
By the look of it, yes, I think we're doing overtime, that's why. They probably want me back at the farm.
Just enjoying watching the swallows feeding low over this field here, and they come over from their nest sites over in your farmyard.
Yes, we're a good half-mile away from that site, and it just shows how important a good insect source is for all the species of migratory birds that visit here. I suppose swallows, house martins, sand martins and unrelated swifts are all insectivorous feeders and only feed on the kind of flying aerial plankton. They had a bonanza at the end of last week when the ants swarmed here, and I was driving past this field about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on my way to the next job, and I couldn't quite understand what I was seeing. It was like turrets of almost volcanic smoke coming out from the brow of this hill, and the ant nests had all been opened up. Somehow or other the message got round. It was ant marriage day, and the air was full of swallows, the house martins, which are not local. They're coming 2-3 miles away, and sand martins from the quarry behind us. They all got the message, and that's what gave the game away. And I just walked into the field, and the little mounds of soil had all been opened up, almost to get your small finger in the holes, and they were just swarming out, these winged ants, males and females. And it was just an extraordinary sight, Matthew.
You were telling me earlier, though, sadly, the memo didn't go to the swifts.
No, that's why I didn't really mention them. Do you know what? We've hardly had a swift at High Ash Farm this year, and this is the real peak of the season. I've grown crops especially for them. Mustard and fodder radish over there on the horizon, now coming into flower, covered in tiny black pollen beetles, which is manna from heaven for them. And yet the sky at this time of the year would normally be just jam-packed with thousands of swifts, not making any noise, not screaming like they normally do, and just getting on with feeding. And when they fly overhead, you can see this little white bulge underneath their chin, which shows they've got a full load on, ready to take back wherever the nest is. So it's quite worrying, but as they're long-lived birds, I've got hope for next year, to keep fingers crossed that we have the numbers back again. I think some of them have actually gone back. They're flying 24/7, gone back to Africa, and given up the idea of nesting in the UK just for this year. But before we leave this pollen and nectar field, we've been enjoying the Burnet moths, and there's some plants here. You remember last week we just touched on them briefly. Parasitic plants. You know, when you have lots of livestock, you'll have parasites with it, and the same happens in the plant community. Obviously, the first one to spring to mind would be your mistletoe, and last week I described how I've been harvesting yellow rattle, which is down here. If I go down on my hands and knees, these are just the skeletons of the little cup-shaped flowers. Probably if I turn it upside down, there might be the odd seed left in. No, just one or two little paper-like seeds.
This is your panning for gold.
That's right, my panning for gold moment. I've yet to find any gold. Now, that's not the only parasite here. You can see there's lots. The whole understory is filled up with yellow rattle stems. Here is the next one to come along. Another complete parasite, this one. Mistletoe is a semi-parasite in that it has green leaves and has chlorophyll in it, so it's not entirely dependent on its host. Yellow rattle also has some green pigment in, so it has chlorophyll in it. So again, although it roots in on the species of grasses around here, which is why you can hardly see any grass in this wildflower field. And then this third member of the parasite family, which we're talking about, is this little fellow, standing about 7-8 inches high, no colour whatsoever. Looks as though, although it's still alive, looks as though you can almost set fire to it, and it's called lesser broomrape. The broomrape family is really extraordinary. It's quite a wide and diverse set of plants. Some parasitise tree roots, and in this case it's parasitising here, the plant right beside it. In fact, it's growing right in the middle of it, and it's red clover. Here you are, large 3 leaves there of the clover plant. It's not really hurt the plant too much.
So it's living off the energy of this plant, then?
Yes, yeah, it's completely parasitic.
There's no green at all?
No, look at that. And once you sort of start looking around, you can find clumps of it. And if I just part the lady's bedstraw and the knapweed out of the way, and there it is. And any member of the legume family, so it will parasitise peas, for instance, but in arable fields it wouldn't have the chance to get established. So it kind of forms clumps. It's annual and perennial, so it will grow from seed as well. So if I just take a lower, I'd like to call it a flower. The flower's actually like an orchid flower with a big bottom lip.
It's like tobacco brown, isn't it?
It is, and if I just pull the old flower case away, there should be one. I've never learnt to harvest this particular crop. You'd have to do it by hand, and it's quite important part of the diversity. There's the seed, just if I get it in the sun there, you can just see a little black seed, quite small, quite diminutive, just sitting in there. It's quite long as well, about 1/8 of an inch long, jet black, and that's the seed of this parasitic plant, which just drops on the ground because there's legumes growing all around it here. There's lots of sandfoin here, which is a suitable host. Any of the leguminous family, it would parasitise lupins if you had those in here. Pea family, obviously, and also the birdsfoot trefoil. That's one of the other plants that it can parasitise, but there's lots of it here growing right through the understory. Here's a clump here of 4 close together, all about 150 mil tall, so you could walk through here and not see this, and yet it's a really important part of diversity. And that's the hard thing when you're doing conservation. There are lots of things which feed on other things which you may or may not like, and I have mentioned it before. My barn owls, which I love, hunt regularly around the field margins for the harvest mice, which I also love. And when you're doing ecology like this, conservation on the farm, you have to kind of stand back and not interfere. So you certainly wouldn't want to control the barn owls in order to increase the population of the harvest mice, but having the two in balance is absolutely perfect, and that's the challenge of modern wildlife farming, if you like, rewilding some people call it, or just going back to allow things like this to happen naturally without human interference, and that's the secret. So Yep, just really wonderful. So there we are, a new one for you, Matthew. Lesser broomrape.
What about the greater broomrape?
Yes, it's exactly the same. Taller plant, Orabash minor, this one particularly, is the scientific name for it. And as I said, it's a member of a really strange and odd family of parasites. How they've evolved, because they're obviously newer plants than, in terms of ecology, than the original plants which they grow on, and the parasites have arisen as a result of other things being here. It's kind of a lazy way of making a living, really. You've just latched on to somebody else's hard work and getting the benefits from it and not having to produce chlorophyll. So it's a strange plant. And again, poor Laura Cuffin, I'll have to get her here with a camera and see if we can take a picture of this really odd plant. So lesser broomrape.
It's all the different colours in the Norfolk countryside that we love to tell you about at this time of the year. Here we are in the second half of July, and you've just brought me here, Chris, to a part of the farm just on the edge of one of the main paths, which is a riot of colour.
Oh, Matthew. And on the far side of it must be a dozen people walking up the permissive walk up quite a steep hill there.
I can just see their heads bobbing up and down.
And this is my regal wildflower field. We've got red, white and blue in front of us, and some yellow as well for good measure.
It looks like Van Gogh's palette.
It absolutely does. Let's just walk in a little bit. There's a track mown through. This is freshly sown. I think I did it on the bluebell open day at the farm here. I put the seed in. Part of the field had kind of got overwhelmed with the grasses and the sandfoin, and lots of the people who walk here sometimes make donations, particularly for a specific thing which we're trying to do. In this case, it was a couple of acres of wildflowers, British annual kind of native wildflowers, which you don't really see anymore. So first one to come to view, we'll do the red, obviously, to start with. Red, white and then blue. And look at this, it's a poppy, English native poppy in full flower with the petals on it. Obviously the symbol of Armistice Day, one over there as well. They're now coming out. They generally, it always surprises everybody, they kind of flower well till about midday, and then towards the end of the day the petals all just peel away and drop onto the ground, and that's what all these, the sort of, where it's been flowering for about 2 weeks now, and you see all these little like pepper pot seed heads, the pepper pots facing upwards, and there's a little lid on the top of the pod, just under the lid. As it gradually dries and the pod itself shrinks, there'll be tiny little vent holes, because poppy seed's extremely small. One poppy can quite easily produce 10,000 seeds, and the beauty of poppies is when the seeds drop on the ground, some birds feed on the ground over the winter, will eat the seeds, but it is one of those seeds which has a really long viability in and under the soil, and so it can quite comfortably last 100 years. So if you ploughed this field in the future and just left it, then poppies would come back again. There's one over there just about to start to come into flower. It's got the poppy heads demurely hanging down to one side, and about 25 years ago I accidentally, and it was an accident, in a crop of winter barley, I'd missed about 1.5 acres of spraying. I think I'd run out of spray on the field and came back to the farm and just forgot to do it, and this corner of the field was just covered in poppies. I was, if you're a farmer and you've let poppies escape, you have a red face because you get ribbed remorselessly by the neighbouring farmers. What, are you growing weeds, boy? That'd be what the neighbour would say. And in amongst them, I started walking through and was fascinated by just the sheer volume of poppies and the riot of colour. And there was a pure white one. and I rang a local flower expert up who used to write regularly in our local newspaper, the Eastern Daily Press at the time, Grace Corn, and she came out and photographed it, and that was really lovely to see. Never seen one before, and she'd been looking right through her life since she was a little girl, and it's the first one that she saw.
And you haven't seen one since?
No, I haven't. No, absolutely stunning. So that's our red. The next one would be white, and I've got two choices here in front of us. I could choose the feverfew. There's some mayweed there, but we're going to go for a slightly different one here.
Swallows flying into one of the large barns at High Ash Farm, feeding their young. This is one of the big conservation success stories I know you're very proud of.
Just brings a huge delight for youngsters just waiting for mum and dad.
The podcast aims to bring you sights and sounds like this every week, and we're very thankful of your support. So any donations or subscriptions are very welcome indeed.
All we need is a little bit of extra help. It just keeps it going from week to week.
Monthly or one-off subscriptions, whatever the size, and the website highashfarm.com/podcast.
6 youngsters right above our head, all with their gates wide open. Got a flat top, lots of bees flying around us, and it's this one. It's really feathery leaf. In fact, that gives it part of its scientific name, milfolium, which literally means, I've taken one of the leaves off lower down, which literally means 1,000 leaves. And there probably are 1,000 leaves on the plant. Achilles milfolium, known to most people as yarrow, and really deep-rooted, lots of iron in the sap of the plant as well, and it was used right back in Greek times. I think Socrates used it to heal the wounds of his soldiers, and sort of would wrap the wounds up with yarrow to help the healing process. So a little bit of history. Lots more plants to come into flower, and Rat's just joined us. Yes, he didn't want to miss out. So that's our white one, and then blue. The deep, deep blue, and I think it's the only flower in the UK that's actually properly given its name to a colour, and it's cornflower blue, and that's what this one is. And I do have to put my tongue in my cheek because my early farming career embraced the introduction of the first agrochemicals, and before that it was a curse for my father. Cornflowers growing out in the arable crops, particularly the spring barley and the winter barley and the wheat as well, and it would grow up within that. And you can see there's cornflower right beside us. We're right beside one of the walks on the farm, in the centre of the farm. It's really beautiful, but the little seed heads, once it's finished flowering, here's one. If I just pull the seeds off, there we are, you can get this small hard head which contains the remnants of the flowers, and here it is, and it behaves exactly the same way in the stored grain as a grain would, and it's really difficult to get out. So it's a real problem weed because it would contaminate your bread wheat or your feed for the cattle, and so it was a real nuisance. But it was in about the late 1950s through to the 60s that this common nuisance weed, which now is obviously quite scarce and beautiful, was almost eliminated, and it would just start to reappear in the late 1980s into the early 90s, when we had this feature on farms called set aside, and farmers would have ploughed the land and just left it bare. At that particular time, you'd have to green it in today's terminology. It'd have to be covered with a green cover crop, but back then cornflower started to reappear with the poppies. Anything that could last a long time deep down in the soil would get through to the next kind of generation and start again in the freshly tilled soil. And remember, worms, if you've got a good worm population down in the soil, they'll bring up soil from their little worm burrows, and the soil may or may not contain sort of what we used to call weed seeds, and now they're wildflowers, and that's how it would repopulate, and that's why it started to reappear. But I got some cornflower seed, and I've done a couple of acres here, and it is just a sight for sore eyes. As you said, it's good enough for a painting of Van Gogh.
And the yellow?
And the yellow is, wow, incredible. Look, there's a bumblebee just beside that. That's corn marigold, another huge problem weed, and it was invasive. And you can see the plants have come up and they've spread wide open, and it would go right over the top of the cereal crop. And bearing in mind how dry it's been up until this point of the summer, it's absolutely thriving on this sort of arid, sandy soil here. So corn marigold, yet another one of those which is really scarce. I mean, you don't see it in cereal fields. It would be highly unusual, but you can still kind of get the seed and put it onto areas like this. And
Custard yellow, isn't it?
It's beautiful, isn't it? As I said, you've got the whole riot of colours here, but I don't think, going back to the cornflower, there's any other flower that if you went into a paint shop and said, I want some cornflower blue, you'd know exactly what colour you were going to get. Would just look across there slightly into the sun. It is just breathtakingly beautiful, and that's one of the rewards of conservation farming and looking after nature, that you can do things like this, and anybody walking through has the pleasure of just enjoying it and watching the butterflies over the top, which is what we're doing at the moment. There we are, a sort of little breath of fresh air, a treat, and a riot of colour. It kind of sets the day up nicely if I want to come here early in the morning. And yeah, it's quite stressful farming sometimes when you're working against the weather, and this is a kind of way of taking a deep breath, dropping your shoulders, and being glad to be alive.
Rat doesn't look too stressed. He's fallen asleep on my boot here.
He has. Look at this.
Have we got some emails to look at?
We have. We've got lots of questions. Gone back to the truck.
Valerie Graham has emailed, and she thanks you for the podcast, Chris. I know you enjoy reading and feel that you would really enjoy George Orwell's diaries, as they give so much details about the weather, flowers and fauna, particularly birds, growing vegetables. It's clear that seasons were very different in the build-up and during the Second World War to now. It's a really good read, as there is the domestic diary and the wartime all in one book. So that's something you've got to go and get.
Yes, I've touched on some of the stories in there already, particularly as it's relevant to my childhood right back in the early 1950s, the end of the Second World War. Rationing had just finished, and it's very prominent as well, because it relates very closely to my father's descriptions of the summers back then and harvesting, and it was all being done with binders, so it's a really different world. Lots of hard work, lots of labour on the farm, and on this farm when I was born, 42 full-time workers, so the changes are phenomenal, and they are still happening.
The next one from Phoebe Passmore. She sent us what she describes as 2 sad photographs. Nearly every window pane is standard, large and about a metre squared, and 2 separate accidents in the house. First picture, chiff chaff, maybe a warbler who hit my window. It was a big crash bang wallop for a small bird. And the next picture, maybe a fieldfare. So these are birds that have died colliding with the windows.
Yes, this is quite a common feature, and it's a first picture. It's really sad, really. I don't often talk about deceased animals, but I suppose it's a lesson, and it kind of teaches you what's out in the environment. I remember when the BBC moved to the Forum in the middle of Norwich, really strangely, a woodcock was found. Oh, we just had a hobby fly right over the top of us.
I see, yes, over there.
Yes, going at great speed. Oh, wow. just caught my eye. This particular, the first candidate for the window crash was a willow warbler. You mainly see them in the southern half of the UK at this time of the year, and it's one of our commonest warblers, and it's quite identifiable. It's got a little white stripe almost above and through the eye, and that distinguishes that beautiful little bird. And the second one is, which is also another casualty, was not a fieldfare as such, it was a song thrush.
Oh, yes, you can see the speckled chest
Yes, you can, yes. Fieldfares, all members of the thrush family, redwing, obviously our blackbird, and slightly loosely related as well, nightingales and robins, all member of those thrush families. And sadly it's deceased as well, and this is what happens with windows, but it's not always the kind of bird's fault. It is strange to say that. Quite often out in even garden territories, birds are attacked by sparrowhawks, and you have to be pretty quick to escape. So they're in panic mode, and they'll often fly into things they wouldn't normally fly into. So that's one. You can use sort of stick-on see-through transparencies over the window to help sort of protect your house from bird collisions like this, but it's quite common. I think we've got some people going to walk past us shortly. Morning.
Rat has seen off the threat. Nigel is our next emailer, and there's a photograph, very alien looking collection of what looks to me like caterpillars, all in amongst some very finely woven gossamer. Nigel says, saw these on High Ash Farm, haven't been able to identify them. They were on the hawthorn.
Oh yes, and it's quite a common species, and it's a brown-tailed moth, and the adult sort of doesn't really help with the identification if you did see it. It's quite a nice sort of soft white moth with quite a hairy thorax, and the wings are beautifully white. It looks like an ermine moth to start with, and it's called the brown-tailed moth because at the tip of the abdomen there's a tuft of brown hairs, and if the moth gets annoyed or agitated or a bee flies too closely to it, it raises its abdomen and shows off this very distinctive tuft of brown hairs right on the tip of the abdomen, and it lays its eggs on its food plant, which is either blackthorn and in this case hawthorn. They're quite common at the farm, and it's one of those moth species. When the eggs hatch into caterpillars, the caterpillars spin a colonial cocoon all around themselves. It won't cover the whole bush like the species we visited earlier in the year at High Ash Farm.
That was on the spindle, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was a spindle ermine moth, and that covered up several bushes all over the farm. Looked quite sinister and quite spectacular as well. These form these little colonial webs, usually about 18 inches, and the caterpillars work within that, so they feel quite secure from birds and will devour the leaves of their food plant before pupating. So there we are, really lovely photograph.
And hello as well to Robert and Stuart, who've now got a caravan in this area.
Yeah.
And they say they've discovered the farm and the podcast and are really enjoying it.
Oh, that's really good. Thank you very much, Robert and Stuart, and from Ayrshire. So they're obviously spending some time down in this area, and I hope you're able to enjoy, because it won't be far from you. Almost in Stoke itself is our new teasel maze, and that's proving really, really popular.
Good morning.
Indeed. So this is the problem of sort of answering questions on one of the permissive walks at the farm. Rat takes objection to everybody, and he's seeing all the walkers and the horses off and leaving us in peace and quiet, hopefully. Oh dear.
Well, that's almost it for another week, but please do email the podcast. The address, chris@highashfarm.com. And a big thank you once again for all your donations via the website highashfarm.com/podcast. You can find out what to do there, monthly donations or one-offs. It's all gratefully received, so we can keep this little slice of the Norfolk countryside going.
Thank you very much to everybody. And remember, the farm's open 24/7, access is free, Teasel Maze is up and running, and this little wildflower field will certainly be in full flower until at least the end of July. So you have to make hay while the sun shines.